I'm at the Dulwich Picture Gallery to see an artist who, until now, was almost completely unknown outside his home country, and that's the Norwegian artist Nikolai Astrup. Like Ian Munch, who was 17 years his senior, Astrup was a painter and an innovative printmaker. In fact, Munch admired him very much and collected some of his woodblock prints. During his relatively short life, he was 47 when he died, Astrup was hugely successful, and today he's something of a national cultural figure. So, until this week, how come we've never heard of Astrup?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, there are several reasons for this. I think Edvard Munch, for a start, is the only Norwegian anyone's ever heard of, and he blows everyone out of the water. But I think it's an interesting comparison because Astrup, as it were, turns inwards. He has all that training. He travels around Europe. He's an international artist in his training and his awareness of what's going on. But then he goes back to Jølster, to this really tiny area of Western Norway, and dedicates himself to bringing that tiny slice of the world to life. It's quite hard to get to, apart from anything else. I mean, the nearest town is Bergen, that's 4 hours away. So he was out of the loop, and I think he was deliberately out of the loop.
Tell us about the garden he cultivated in a very remote, rugged part of Western Norway. It's an extraordinary place, and the buildings that he built from scratch, I think. So tell us about that and how that inspired you as an artist.
Well, in many ways, I think Astrup Tunet, which is what it's called now, it's kind of the Astrup farm, but it's Sandalstrand is the place that he bought in 1912 and moved into in late 1913. At that point, Sandalstrand was a tiny little hut perched in an old farmstead on a really steep slope. I mean, it's Eiger-like. There it goes up from the lake, and there was no path up to it. It was nothing. It was a little shepherd's hut, nothing. And this is an asthmatic man with real lung problems. He was ill all his life. I mean, it's remarkable that he survived as long as he did. And yet, he builds on this incredibly unpromising site something which really does count as a work of art in a very special way.
And the bonfire paintings, they're slightly, it would be far too strong to call them sinister, but there's something quite uneasy going on, something uncanny, something primitive and quite dangerous, slightly. I mean, they're quite different in image, aren't they?
Well, they are, but this is this great underlying theme which is through so many of the things, and I think in the bonfire paintings it really comes to fruition. And that's the idea of the childhood memory that I've mentioned, this fact that he has a much more direct relationship with how he remembered his childhood than I think most of us do. I very vaguely remember stuff from my childhood, but not much. He seems to be able to plug into it, and it was vital and important to him. The bonfire pictures all come from a childhood memory of being excluded. It's an important thing, actually. His upbringing was slightly repressive. His father was the Lutheran pastor, very strict, in a very religiously strict period in Norway. And his father took one look at the bonfires, and you can spot a Viking survival when you see one. It's really, it's clearly pagan. And in fact, although it's tied to the Feast of St. John, which happens on the day after the bonfires, this is the 23rd of June, they tried to Christianize it. But even now, there are kind of mock weddings and things like that. It's a fertility ritual, for heaven's sake. And so Nikolai was forbidden to join in. And this is one of these great explosions of freedom in a difficult climate at the time. These people were working hard in a very unforgiving landscape. And the Midsummer Bonfire was just one of those moments where people just threw inhibitions aside. The fiddle player would play, they would dance, there was drinking. There was quite clearly a lot of what we politely call courtship going on at these events. And Astrup consequently sees, even as a child, he sees it as something forbidden, He sees it as something that his father thought was a direct path to hell. He enjoys the music but can't take part in it. He sees it as erotic. It's erotically charged for him. And he was a very red-blooded young man. And so all of that comes out in the bonfires. It takes you straight back, I think, to the kind of Viking age, which is very important for Norwegians. It was a time when Norway was, the kings of Norway ruled. It was a unified time. And you have to bear in mind that for every artist of this period, it's an important political moment in Norway's history. They had been ruled by Denmark until 1814, and then from 1814 to 1905 they were ruled by Sweden. 1905 they become free, independent for the first time. But for artists like Astrup, this is why they are so concerned in creating a vision of Norway that feels independently Norwegian and has a strong visual impact.
And the trolls and those strange haystacks, that's all part of Norwegian mythology.
That's right, and even as a child, the local farmers thought that Astrup was eccentric. As he went around, he was interested in all that and asked them to tell him stories of the local folklore and the mythologies, and they all thought he was mad and wasting their time. What they thought of him when he started painting it, goodness only knows. He was always a bit of an outsider in that community. But it's always there, and eventually, I think, in my case, I'm clearly running mad with this exhibition, but I'm beginning to see faces in everything. And that mountain there, if that's not a nose and a mouth, I don't know what. Actually, that mountain is the mountain that's known as the Ice Queen, because from a particular angle, when it's completely under snow, not like this, completely under snow, it takes the form of a reclining naked lady. And I thought, oh heck, this is clearly a heterosexual fevered imagination at work, until I actually saw it. I was standing in Astrup and looking at it, and actually when she is covered in snow, it does look like a reclining naked lady. There you go. But I think, in Norwegian terms, the landscape could be alive, it could wake up. It could be a troll. Trolls are extraordinary. I love trolls. I've become a troll obsessive, because they inhabit the landscape in mysterious and sinister ways. They can be comic as well, but fierce. And they can be mountain-sized. I mean, literally a mountain can stand up, because it's silica-based as a life form. But they can be like a tree, and Norwegians see trolls in trees all the time. And eventually, you go slightly mad, and I walk to work seeing troll trees everywhere. Everything looks like a troll eventually. In the end, and I hope everyone sees this when they come to the show, you're in the presence of someone who completely thinks for himself and comes up with a style that is unique to him.